Assalamu alaikum students. Hope so you all are fine. May Allah bless you all and keep you protected in this critical situation. Dear students, this lecture is the continuation of the previous lecture uh, entitled as Language, Culture and Thought. In this lecture we will focus on Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Students, thinking is something which is a continuous process. Thought making or thinking or thoughts, they are continuous, they do not end. Even our mind works even we are if we are sleeping. In the form of dreams, our minds carry on working. This particular phenomena has been studied with different perspectives. In psychology, it goes on with different perspectives like consciousness, unconsciousness, subconsciousness, and so on. In sociology, it is also discussed as a part of socialization and social grooming. In linguistics, we study this phenomena with relation to language, which I have discussed in previous lecture. As we have discussed that every culture has a particular language and there is a relationship between language and culture. So when we have a relationship between language and culture, it means we have a relationship between language and thought as well. Because if we are the member of a particular group, so we have to think about those particular things, either about eating, food, religion, or anything other. So if there is relationship between language and culture, so there must be a relationship between language and thought. So on this particular area, so many researches have been done to understand this relationship. So when we start studying this particular topic, so some question arise in our mind, for example, which are mentioned here. Is thought possible without language? Ask this question from yourself. Is thought possible without language? Do you think in language or without language? This question extends further as, does structure of our language shape our thinking? Moving to another question, does our perception shape the structure of language? So basically these three questions arise in our mind. First two basically deals with language, and the third one deals with the thinking shaping language. So when we discuss these questions, another point comes into discussion, which is that language and cultures are superficial. It means that language and cultures are interrelated, they are deep. We cannot understand the relationship of language and thought, or language and culture, without the study of the all aspects. Means we cannot make any conclusion with a particular single understanding or single worldview. How and why? Because we acquire any culture or any language with the help of our cognition, means mental and conscious understanding. So the acquisition of any culture or language runs deep, means it works on deeper level. It is not some sort of simple process, it is a very complex process. For example, we see so many things around us happening in our background, so we do not actually memorize each and every word by repeating or pronouncing that word. We most of the time memorize those words by simply listening or watching, which is happening again and again in our surrounding, and this word become the part of our mental memory, or what we say cognition. Means in simple words, it becomes the part of our nature, and then actually we are able to acquire that particular culture or language. For example, if we are trying to teach someone the practice of namaz, the prayer, we cannot simply ask him to offer prayer. Obviously, if we are offering prayer, or we are we ourselves are offering prayer, or we are taking them into mosques or worship places, so that will make them conscious, or it will become the part of their cognition, and they will actually easily memorize or understand. So as I was talking, thinking is an ongoing process or continuous process. Is it true that we cannot think without words? Do you agree? Again, this is not a simple debate. It puts another question: does thought depend on language? Yes. On some extent, we can say that we cannot speak without thinking. Because we have to use a word correctly before we fully understand the concept. We express ourselves in paralinguistic ways with the help of gestures and expressions. For example, if you have to say greetings to someone, if I say you to greet someone who is coming just in this room, so what you will do? All of the sudden, some words come into your mind. In our tradition, we have to say Assalamu alaikum, we have to shake hand. So now you are thinking that what is the relation of greeting? Just think about Hindus, what they do. They do not use this word. And they do not greet in this way. They will use the word parnam, and parnam is not simple linguistic word. It also determines our thinking, because the Hindu person he will fold his hand in front of that person, and it is a way of greeting for that particular culture. So the folding of hand is something which is paralinguistic, means when we are using our gestures and body language. So it means our thoughts depend on language to some extent. The another point which is very important here is, does really language determine our thought? So many psychologists, they believe that language dictates the way we think, which I was discussing in last slide. And even they say that language not only determine our ideas, but it actually determine our way of thinking as well. Wittgenstein is a scholar who says that the limits of language mean the limits of my world. For example, if I say a particular word, I have the limitation of word as well. For example, in our culture, we use word Allah about the master of this universe. So when we try to see the world, we will see the world with the lens of Allah. Allah is the master of 7 skies, 7 earths, and so on, which are the references given in our religious books. But what about Hindus, Christians, Jews? Do they think like us? Do they have the same words for us? Like Hindus or even Greek, they worship idols. They have so many gods. They have a god of sky, they have a god of wine, they have a god of power. So they do not use such words, or they do not think in that way in which we think. If they have raining outside, they won't think like us. It has been mentioned in many books, dramas, and novels that they refer to that particular god. I am talking about Greeks and Hindus, the people who have different gods for each thing and phenomena of this world. So, how they do actually? How they learn? They learn through language, they think through language. But we do not. But it doesn't mean they are wrong or we are wrong. Here we are actually trying to discuss the differences between cultures and the relationship of culture and language and thought. So, as I am repeating again and again, we have different culture, so we have different language, and that particular language and culture and thought, they have a relationship. On this relationship, so many people have tried to conduct research. Worf is one of those. According to him, we can cut nature up, organize into concepts, like a particular person or a particular community have a particular nature. So we can divide that into concepts. So why we can do so? Because that particular set of concepts have an agreement in our language, in that particular language. The structure of a language determines the way in which the speaker view the world. For example, the people living in Australia who live in hilly areas, in remote areas, who actually live tribal life, they do not think about like the Australians living in cities. They don't have religious belief like modern Australians, as they have different concept about God. They do not believe in a concept of God like Christians, because they consider nature, means the surroundings, as their nature and God and whatever. Their forests, their mountains are the everything for them, because all these forest, mountains and glaciers, they provide them food, they provide them meat, they provide them fruits, vegetables. So they behave and they think about the surrounding and forest nature, means which we call nature in the form of trees and mountains. They understand the world in that way. But the people who follow Christianity, Islam, or having some sort of modern culture without any religion, they have different belief. So their concepts can be divided. So I give you another example. Both Sapir and Wolf, they conducted research on Hopi culture. Hopi people, they live in Arizona in America. They also live a tribal life. They don't have the concept of some particular quantity. Like whenever we think about milk or water, a particular thing come into our mind. For example, a glass of water, a cup of water, or a glass of milk, or a cup of milk, 1 liter milk. They don't have such concept, because they don't have materialistic culture on the base of currency. They won't ask anyone to provide me a cup of tea or a cup of water. Even they don't have the concept of days like we have Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and Thursday. They have their own nature and concepts, like they have a 10-day cycle, and they work on their culture, their routine task on the basis of that cycle. They won't say that I will work tomorrow. They actually say that I will work after that 10th day cycle, and 10th day cycle is related to a particular event. And their priest, who is actually religious leader, he is responsible of maintenance of that particular 10 days cycle. The common example of this concept is Chinese year. What about our year, which we are following? A year of having 365 days. But what about moon calendar, Hijri calendar, having less days? And what about Chinese year? I think you have to find out about that. So find out about Chinese year. Chinese year even have more days than our common English calendar or Georgian calendar. Even it have years in a year. It is a cycle of years based on a particular animal. it it is not something silly actually. It has a unique cultural concept based on Chinese tradition, and it has a mutual understanding among Chinese people. And even the every year in a particular Chinese year, having a particular name of an animal have another understanding about that particular year. You can simply find out or search about that about Chinese year from internet, and it will be an interesting information for you. So uh, we talk further about Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis was actually given in 1930, having two basic principles. Number one is linguistic determinism. Number two is linguistic relativity. Linguistic determinism have two versions. The strong version says that structure of a language determines the way in which speakers of that language view the world. The thing which I am repeating again and again. This is the strong version. Like we use word Allah, Bhagwan, Ishwar, and whatever, whosoever use, he actually sees the world with this view. And weaker version, it says that language does not determine the worldview, but it influences, means it actually focuses on the some influence of language. And the second principle, it says that different languages represent different ways of thinking. This principle has also received so many discussion and appraisal. And linguistic determinism is certain time has been criticized because some people believe that people do not actually have a particular determinism on the basis of language. So Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, basically it was given by Sapir and Whorf. Sapir was an American anthropologist. Anthropologist means the person who studies anthropology. Anthropology means the study of human beings and their ways of living. He was a leader of American structural linguistics. He wrote a book, Language and Introduction to the Study of Speech. He was actually born in Lauenburg, Germany. He was the student of Franz Boas, and he was the teacher of Benjamin Whorf. Franz Boas, actually he was the pioneer of anthropological research, in which they have tried to study about the human culture and human race. Sapir, he says that human beings do not live in the society alone. Means he says that when people live in a society, they interact. Language of society predispose certain choices of interpretation how we view the world. So according to him, there are different societies, different languages, different cultures, and the people of those different cultures interpret the world differently. For example, how do you think about roof? Roof. A surface of a house. Yes, for the people living in Punjab, it is something, a straight or empty surface where they have put some sort of old items or bricks. But what about the people living in northern areas? They have different style and structure of roofs which actually help them to prevent from the heavy snowfall. Because if they do not make those structure, the snow will continue to be on the roof and it will become a glacier and the house will be demolished. This is the simple example that how do we interpret. For example, if one person from Gilgit Baltistan, he will say about roof, he will interpret about the roof differently. And if we talk about roof in Punjab, we will make and think and interpret differently. We will not think at same level. We will interpret, we will make, we will construct, and even we will discuss with our friends or anyone else differently because we live in different society and the language of that particular society or the culture of that particular society will also have different features. Worf says that we dissect nature along lines laid down by our native languages. We categorize objects in the scheme laid by the language, and if we do not subscribe to these classification, we cannot talk or communicate. So Worf also have the same view like Sapir. So he says that we have particular classifications of language and we cannot communicate without this. So imagine about soldiers in our culture when they fight for Islam or Pakistan. What we call them? Do we have any specific title for them? Yes, we have Shaheed. Have you ever imagined that we have called them the person who die in fighting for Islam and Pakistan, and we have called them the dead bodies simply, or the person who are died only. So we actually call them Shaheed in our native languages. Why? Because this particular classification exists in our society. We cannot talk or communicate without that. Whenever we talk about Shaheed, a person related to army or police comes into our mind. Although it can be someone who has been killed or died due to or according to the teachings of Islam, like a teacher or a student, if he or she is getting education or teaching somewhere, he is also called Shaheed. So the word Shaheed has a particular classification. We most of the time we use this particular word to interpret, and without this word we cannot communicate in that particular language or culture. For example, I give you some more examples. In our culture, we have the concept of Maulvi or Imam. Do other cultures have these concepts? Yes, they have, but different. Like priest, witch doctors in African tribes, they do not actually work like our Imam or Maulvi, but they have some sort of designation which is oriented on religious workings. They offer prayers but according to their own religion. The simple difference is that the witch doctor or the priest in tribal areas of Africa and America or India, they offer prayers with the meat of dead animal. But a imam or a Maulvi in our culture does not offer the prayer in this way. So simply being the classification of imam, Maulvi, or a person from Islam having a connotation in our mind of being holy or sacred, having the duty of performing holy deeds as compared to the other one who is totally different from us. So basically we talk, so this is not the debate of right and wrong, but actually we view the world on this basis. We have these classifications, we think about the world with these classifications. So this was actually their research and their idea which was conveyed by them. And as I have discussed, there are two principles of this hypothesis: linguistic determinism and relativity. Determinism focuses that language determines our thinking pattern. We view and think about the world, and it is also called strong determinism. I have given you example that when we think through words like being Muslim, being Hindu, we pray. So we pray with the perspective of that particular religion. So this is determinism. Like we think with the help of being Muslim identity, Hindu identity, or Christian identity. Linguistic determinism also believe that the differences in language cause differences in thoughts. And these thoughts are determined by language, not by the world. Like the word. So I think no one have ever started the debate, means the start of the day, if they are follower of the particular religion, as opposed to each of them. For example, a Muslim do not use does not use the word of Christians, and same is the case with the Christians. They do not use the word of Muslims. So because there are differences, and when the word they change or they differ, thinking also become different. I give you one more example. For example, rabbit or goat or cow. A Muslim will think about the meat, but a Hindu will never think about meat. The fundamentalist person who believe in any of religion, he would not accept that ideology like beef meat. Why? Because if language differ, thought also differ, thinking also differs. Example, Eskimo language, there are number of words for snow: powdery snow, spring snow. But in English language we don't have any word. Even we don't have words for snowfall in our Saraiki Punjabi language, because we don't have ever such phenomena in our culture. There are no mountains or hills. So the word barfbari is taken from Urdu. It is not a native one. Then in Hopi language, the Hopi Indians who live in Arizona state of America, they don't have any distinction about animate and inanimate, because they think stones and clouds are animate, living beings. Like we have the understanding of animate and inanimate, but they don't think, they don't have, even they don't have words for measuring something like 1 kg, 2 kg, or distances. A French tribe, the people who live in remote France areas, they have female words with stone and door. Like they use la femme for women, la pere for stone, la porte for door. What does it mean? It means do they think those thing as female or not? Even in some cultures, like we think in our culture, sun sun, sun, suraj as masculine, but some culture they believe sun as a feminine power. Even in some cultures, god, the concept god is taken as masculine, but in traditional and ancient cultures and some tribal cultures, the concept of god is also taken as feminine. In linguistic relativity, we have less similar the languages about the conceptualization of the world. It tells us that different languages of the world view the world differently. But it tells us that language influences thinking. They believe that viewpoints vary from language to language. It also believes that humans are at the mercy of that particular language. There is a difference between linguistic relativity and linguistic determinism. Linguistic relativity says that the language a person speaks shapes and influences the way he thinks. It also believes that no two languages are completely or sufficiently similar. They do not represent the ideas of each other culture in same manner. On the other hand, linguistic determinism is an idea. It believes that the things a person thinks are fully determined by the language that they speak. And they have the two version, strong version and weak version. Strong version tells us that language determines thought and we are the prisoners of language, while weak version tells us that language does not completely determine our thought. This hypothesis or this theory have received criticism as well, like the example of French words does not tell us that all these things are female, like stones and doors. They have criticized that this theory isn't true in its complete sense. They also have criticized that the use of language does not inherit a fixed set of patterns. Means, like in today's world, we are living in a global world, we use the words of different languages and expressions of different languages into different cultures. So they believe that the critics believe that the user have the ability to manipulate and create with the language. Means they believe that with the help of language, world views can be different. For example, with the passage of time, someone learns about a particular culture and about a particular language, he or she can learn to think differently as well. The critics also say that the thinking and perception cannot be totally determined, because if thinking and perception are totally determined language, then the concept of language change is impossible. Basically, language change is a sociolinguistic phenomena. So, a language actually evolves with the passage of time. Like glass and jug, they are not the words of Urdu language. We have taken it from English language, and Urdu language actually borrowed these words. This is actually language change through borrowing. So the critics of Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, they believe that if it is true that a particular culture or language determines the thought, then language change is impossible. There would be no language change at all. But languages is all around the world. The languages all around the world take words from the other cultures and other language, and they do have meanings and understandings, and the speakers of that particular languages, they also understand. Like example is given that if a Hopi boy, if he has left his tribe, and if he is has gone to America, they don't have word for computer. So would he face difficulty? No. Obviously, if he is living that particular culture of America, modern America, like he is living in New York City, he will learn about computer, he will learn about mobile, he will learn about technology. If we believe in that theory of Sapir and Whorf, that that thought is always determined by language, like Hopi language have no word, so it means he won't learn about computer or anything which is new. Same is the case with the example of snow. The critics of this theory believe that if people do not know about the different words of snow, so we cannot say that they do not understand about the difference in snow. Like if they are visiting the hilly areas and they found snow, they will understand about the fresh snow, they will understand about the glaciers, they will stand about the other types of snow which are actually available or found in hilly areas. So it is not a complete truth that the people having no knowledge about the words, they do not understand the type or the uh, things related to snow, like glaciers, rivers. So that was all about Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Dear students, in this lecture we have tried to understand the relationship between language and thought, the theory given by Sapir and Whorf, the principles of this theory, linguistic determinism and linguistic relativity, and we have also discussed about the criticism. Thank you very much. Allah Hafiz.